Sharon Schneider, today's guest, is the founder of Integrated Capital Strategies. She helps successful founders deploy their philanthropy and impact investments, now totaling in the billions of dollars. She is the author of Handbook for an Integrated Life, which will be out in July. She'll also share insights about her superpower. I'm your host, Devin Thorpe. Welcome to the Superpowers for Good show. Hi, Sharon. Thank you so much for joining me for this conversation. I'm just thrilled to have you on the show.
Oh, thank you for inviting me.
You know, you have obviously written an amazing new book, the Handbook for an Integrated Life. Tell everybody just a little bit about it before we launch into our conversation.
Yeah, it really came from having spent 20 years of my career in the philanthropy sector, sort of trying to, be an effective grant maker and give to organizations that made the world better, but sort of eventually realizing that if we were limiting ourselves, and I was limiting myself to the money I gave to charity as the tool I had to kind of live in alignment with my values, and other than that, I was living in mainstream Western culture, that I was missing out, frankly, and I was misaligned in many ways. And so I had written a blog for a lot of years called The Philanthropic Family that was sort of about just integrating philanthropy into your everyday life. And out of that developed some ideas around how to expand your, aperture, just constantly expanding your aperture of what you have available to make an impact. And so, like 10 years later, finally kind of developed those ideas and turned it into this book.
Now, you shared with me, and I'm so grateful you did, an excerpt that is maybe a summary of 7 principles for an integrated life that are a key part of the book.
Yeah.
I wonder if we could just go through those one at a time quickly. I found them, as I reviewed them, to be, deeply profound, and I just don't want to leave anything out. But your first principle was see the current. What do you mean by see the current?
Yeah, the current refers to that mainstream current that is kind of constantly pushing us in the direction of consume, a bunch of stuff that you don't need. And so I really feel like, again, Western culture has normalized a lot of, behaviors, and you see things like the 10 pieces you must have for spring, or refresh your wardrobe for summer, and the 10 handbags, or, there's constant messages to buy things or to, put yourself first. I think when I was writing the book, there was a headline on CNN that was how to save hundreds of dollars a year. And the scoop was, the tactic was tip, like at a restaurant, tip on 15% of the pre-tax bill. Only give 15% of the pre-tax bill and you'll save yourself again. And I was like, how is that? That's not really where I want to save a couple dollars in my life. And so there's a constant set of messages that are the current, what I call the current. And, marketing powers the current, right? Advertising is the stuff of the current, kind of driving you toward a very specific lifestyle that probably is, if your fundamental value is, wanting other people to be healthy and happy as much as you want to be healthy and happy yourself. You want the people that grow your food, teach your kids, work in stores, all of those things to be healthy and happy too. Step one is just to be aware of the ways that our mainstream culture is pushing you in a different direction.
Such a great insight. Your second principle was to embrace yes and to keep making progress. Now, that needs some explanation. Help us out.
Yeah. So yes and is actually, I first read about it when Tina Fey wrote Bossy Pants. If you wrote, that was a great book.
Brilliant book.
And she talks about the principle of yes and in the context of theater and improv. And how when you're starting a scene, your job is to agree, yes, that's great, whatever someone started, and add something to it. And I'm saying this in terms of start with small actions, start with what you can do today, or maybe what you're already doing and celebrate that. but that doesn't mean you're done, right? So if you take your reusable bags to the grocery store, yes, like that's hard. It's hard to remember until you get in the habit. And what can you do next? For example, I now have mesh produce bags. That was my and. It's like, oh, that's the next step. So I'm not pulling all those little thin plastic produce bags. And then
Right.
when you've kind of mastered that, then you go, and can I switch out for some more organic, or could I switch for some local producers? So it's sort of about celebrating when people are taking steps, including yourself, in the right direction, and then asking what's the next step I can take. So trying to be realistic,
Yeah.
but keep moving.
Yeah, that's powerful. That's powerful stuff. We all have a tendency to take a little bit of pride in what we're doing and to be satisfied. So the yes and great approach. Now let's talk about number 3. Don't give back, just give. How did you come up with that?
I have always hated the term giving back, that we talk about people who are highly successful and now they're going to give back. And I think that framing suggests, to me, the obvious question is, well, what did you take? If you took profits, great. Did you take the unearned, labor, the uncompensated labor of people? Did you take advantage of some lax environmental laws? Like the idea that you accumulate for yourself, and put yourself first to accumulate until you reach some magical point of enough, which in my experience, some people never have enough. And at that point, you will then turn back and give some portion back. I think that's how we got in this mess, right? Again, it's a very individualistic, like I'll get mine first, and then maybe I'll help some other people. And so for me, the principle is really about, can I live in a way so that we all win along the way? So whether that's how
Yeah.
I run my business and pay people, how I tip, I'm an egregious over tipper. How I think about engaging with small business where I know I might be paying a little bit more, but it's really worth it to me, to support their entrepreneurial endeavors. And so all those choices that we make that may not maximize benefit to ourselves in the short term, but help everybody win along the way is really what, Just Give is about.
Yeah. Great. It's such a powerful message. It kind of hits me right between the eyes because I need to work on that. Number 4, you say be brave. What does bravery have to do with this integrated life?
Yeah, I have had moments in my life, and maybe you have too, where, there's something kind of sitting back here that you're not really living into your values the way you'd like to. But you'd rather not look at that and think about it. You kind of just ignore it back there until something forces you. And actually, a great example of this is Russia invading Ukraine and how it forced us all to look head on into the bargain we had made around oil. And that it wasn't just environmental impact, it was also human rights and social, that we had willingly made this bargain with the devil, if you will, that was like, we want that oil, so
Yeah.
we'll keep allowing you, to make those trade-offs. I can't personally affect the war in Russia, but I can make choices by being brave and saying, okay, this is something I gotta turn and face. I can make choices in my own life about my dependence on fossil fuels versus clean energy sources, right? So maybe
Right.
I can insulate my house, if I have the option to have an electric car, or drive less, bike more, or put on a sweater instead of turning on the heat, or many, many choices that I
Yeah.
can take. But sort of, step one is you gotta acknowledge the cognitive dissonance that's maybe been bothering you, and make the commitment to do something about it. And I think that does
Yeah.
take bravery.
That is profound, and I think a lot of people are struggling with that. For Earth Day, I wrote a piece about the importance of let's align our Earth Day thinking with the Ukraine war, and it was interesting, a little disappointing, I have to admit, that people did not resonate with that message. And I think it's because of this issue, right? People were unwilling to confront what you called the cognitive dissonance of saying, oh, when I drive my SUV, even to do something good, I'm using fossil fuels, and that impacts the demand and at the margins, however tiny, it impacts what's going on in Russia and Ukraine. I think that bravery really matters, and I'm glad you called that out. Number 5, you say, is resist the allure of convenience. Talk about that for a minute.
Yeah. So I think, again, in Western culture, we've been convinced, like through many billions of dollars of marketing, that our own convenience is the most important benefit that a product can have. And so I think the perfect example of this I always use is Amazon Prime, right? So 10 years ago, we all signed up for Amazon Prime. We're like, amazing, 2-day delivery. And in the time since, we've come to realize what the consequences of delivering that convenience is to us, right? Which is, delivery drivers peeing in bottles and, repetitive stress injuries from pushing workers so hard to produce. And so, now that like we see what convenience for us means in consequences for the workers along the way, or the environment, and like plastic water bottles, super convenient, or buying any kind of disposable single-use plastics, super convenient, obviously not great. And so this idea that sometimes you pay a little bit of a convenience tax by going the extra mile. And an example of that I say is like again, shopping at a small business. So could I run to a superstore and like buy all the things? And yes, if I'm trying to support, again, my community, the labor in my community, the business owners in my community, then taking an extra 15 minutes to go, is there a local option? Is there somebody that I could support in my neighborhood, that would align with my values better than kind of just doing the convenient thing?
Yeah, that's powerful stuff. Powerful stuff. And again, that's another one that kind of hits me right between the eyes.
Me too, all the time.
I can't even admit to you. I can't even admit my dependence on Amazon Prime.
Devin, but I would say we all do. And I don't set myself up. I have an Amazon Prime account, right? I mean, I don't set myself up as perfect in all these ways, more like someone who's trying to be on this journey and trying to live into this the best that I can. And so I try to give myself as much grace, as everybody else, because we're all like, again, we just have to keep making progress. And I think if we continue to encourage each other and normalize it, we will get there. But yeah, it's all hard. So I don't mean to say any of this as if either A, I've mastered it, or B, you're somehow a failure if you haven't.
Yeah. But this is an opportunity for us to improve. And I see that resist the allure of convenience is one that I can work on for sure. Now, number 6 is walk lightly in the world. How do you think about that?
Yeah. So there's a concept that was developed, in the ecological terms about your ecological footprint, like how much space and resources you take up. And again, in Western cultures, we consume, way more than the earth can reproduce in terms of raw resources in a year. We're just literally using up the planet. And so the principle of walk lightly in the world is about not taking lightly when you choose to consume resources, right? So much of our entertainment, like we shop for entertainment value, not because we need things, and I think the fundamental principle of walk lightly is to make every bit of consumption a choice. And so it's not that you never need things. It's not, I mean, I own things, I own decorative, useless things, certainly in my life. But one of the tools I introduced under that principle is what I call the purchasing hierarchy, which is the idea of if you need something, maybe it's a lawnmower, or maybe it's a new coat, whatever it is. If you think I need something, the first question is, really, we tend to focus on, oh, we'll get organic and fair trade. And I'm always like, well, we'll back up, because that should be like question 4. Question 1 is like, do you really need it? So, unless you're Beyonce on the red carpet, do you need a new dress? Is it really something you need? And then if the answer is yes, I really need it. My coat is, my lawnmower doesn't work, whatever. Then the question is, do you have to own it? Could you borrow it? Could you rent it? So if it's a power washer, could you rent that tool or borrow it from a neighbor instead of buying one, right? If it's something like a coat, then maybe you say, yeah, I really do need to own it. Okay, does it have to be new? Could you get it gently used? Consignment stores or others, so you're not consuming new resources. And then if you can't do that, then you say, let's talk about organic. Can you get it, fair trade, organic, sustainably made, whatever. And then if you still can't do that, then at least get something high quality that will last so you can pass it down. So I think, this can really apply to lots of things, but if it's just the mental model of not jumping right into, I need new stuff, but really making it a conscious choice with a little bit of friction along the way, is how we get there.
Yeah. My wife lives this perfectly, and I'm still trying to learn from her. I love to buy stuff. She hates to buy stuff. So she's the expert on walk lightly in the world. Know your power is your number 7. Tell us about what is our power?
What is our power? It is immense. And, if you, my consulting and like day job is with, very, very wealthy families, billionaire kind of families. And I think it was really for me when I realized, I'm no billionaire, but there is still tens of thousands of dollars passing through my household every year. If you count all of my consumption, so whether it's food, clothing, all of my financial products, my mortgage, my insurance, my cell phone, all the money I spend on entertainment, on travel, on maintaining my household. I have all this consumer power. Plus, I have social networks, right? I'm a sister and a mother and a daughter and a friend. My kids, I have schools that they go to. I have my professional skills and networks. I'm also a voter. I'm a voter, and I'm a active volunteer in my community. And so if I only think of, the 5% or 10% of my budget is what I have to spend to make the world, that's like using 5% of your brain. They say about humans, it's like, how do we activate the other 95%? And that's really, I think, the message of an integrated life is the more of those assets you can bring into alignment with your values, the more powerful that you will be. So just realize, as you think about it, gifts to charity, are certainly one important tool, but the choices that you make every day through all of these different aspects of your life are a far larger tool to bring about the world you want.
Yeah, that is a powerful thing that we can all do, isn't it? That's amazing. Well, Sharon, you are a remarkably accomplished person, and this book is, I think, profoundly important to get there, to accomplish all of this. You have a powerful skill set. What, in that skill set, what do you see as your standout superpower?
I think I'm very good at that big picture, at the vision, and then getting people feeling motivated by that vision rather than demotivated by the problems of the world. So by focusing on what you can do, and painting a picture for what our world could be like if we were all like truly living into our values. So I think of myself as an evangelist for that integrated life, and that's my life's purpose, really.
Oh, that's fantastic. That's fantastic. As you think about that. It seems to me your book is an easy example of that. But what are other examples of how you've deployed that superpower successfully?
Yeah, I think, I mean, through the book, certainly. And then, with the foundations I work with, it really started with, private foundations have to give away 5% basically of their endowment every year in the form of grants. And, back in the early 2000s, I started, not just me by any means, but, the industry started saying, wow, that's amazing. What are you doing with the 95%? That is your endowment, right? And
Yeah.
talking to the entrepreneurs and the foundation boards and families, to say, you've already set these assets aside for a charitable purpose. And, the idea that you separate out the 5% and then literally the 95% might be working in the opposite direction. The classic example, I think, and there was a report back in, again, it was like 99 or two, I don't know, about the Gates Foundation, right, which was grant making around environmental causes and invested in big oil. And the idea of aligning your assets. And so over the years, I like to think that I've, successfully counseled any number of families and foundation boards and endowment holders, nonprofit endowments, to spend more of their focus on what the investments are doing, as opposed to just treating them as a black box that generates cash that we can give away. And so, really giving them the vision of getting 100% of the foundation working towards their mission, against their mission, which was motivating and exciting, I think, for them, and especially for the next generation. So very often it has also been the next generation that saw that as intuitively, obvious. Of course, our investments should be, aligned with the rest of our mission, and then empowering them to kind of make those changes and make those adjustments.
Yeah, that's powerful. How would you coach someone to develop this ability? How would you guide them?
I think one of the mistakes we make as a sector is that we often focus on what people aren't doing enough of, right? So, we might say, oh, well, your plastic straws, that's great, but you're not going to solve climate change by not using plastic straws. And I really encourage, that's why the second principle is yes and, because I think I start with, and the first line of my book is, I'm not doing this to save the world. I'm doing it to save myself, which is, I mean, I want to live every day in alignment with my values, and I want to feel good like that. Like I may be making mistakes. Something that I think is helpful could turn out to be harmful. And when I learn that, I'll adjust and I'll grow and I'll make a different choice. But I think if we focus on individuals and then we build up from there, something like the last line of the book is like, look, I'm not doing this that's not my standard, is will this save the world? But in the end, if we all do these things together, that is how we save the world, right? And so starting with empowering and focusing on the positive actions that individuals can take. I think that doesn't mean we ignore the issues, but, people that are in despair do not take action. And I think that's what cynical, perspectives does, is it makes you feel like, well, what's the point? Nothing's going to happen. Yeah. So I really kind of focus on the individual, and get them excited about influencing their own world.
Yeah. Well, this is profound stuff, and I'm so grateful for you sharing with us. I'm excited to announce that you'll be speaking at Supercrowd 22 in September. I'm just thrilled that you've agreed to speak. My gosh, people will learn so much from you. So thank you very, very much for
My
doing
pleasure.
that. I'm excited about this event, and more excited today now that we've added you to the roster of great speakers. So thank you.
Well, I love what you're doing, by the way, with like getting, again, you're doing the same thing. You're getting people to expand their aperture, and I'm just thrilled to be able to be a small part of it. So thank you for what you're doing.
You'll be a great part of it. Thank you. Um, Before you go, would you tell people how they can learn more about your work, how they can get a copy of the book, and how they can connect with you, maybe on social media or someplace?
Yeah. I'm pretty active on Twitter at Sharon Schneider. It's a SCH kind of Schneider. And I do have a website for the book. It's called theintegratedlife.com is the website. And there you can sign up to be notified. So publication date is July 19th. It's still a little ways away, certainly from when we're recording this, but it feels, feels like a really long time from when you finish the book. So I cannot wait for that date to come. But if you can sign up there for a reminder, and I've also got resources then around the book at the website that you'll get as well. So I call it the Kickstart Kick to help you to start to be more aligned. The 7 principles, there's a little bit of worksheets and kind of journaling that you can do. There's all the web sites of the companies mentioned in the book and the products and the sites. So that's all non-affiliate links. I don't get anything. It's just sharing what I think are great resources, and hopefully we'll build a little bit of a community there.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, Sharon, thank you so much for being with us today. We look forward to seeing you in September, and we wish you every success with the book and with your great work in helping to bring alignment to people, including those wealthy families you work with that have so much to align. They make a big difference when they align their resources. So we wish you every success in all of that you're doing.
Thank you.
All righty. Let's do some good.